Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while. I kind of went on hiatus from going live from the Orioles, or should I say the Ravens recaps, because let's just say early in the season it didn't go well, but to go from 1-5 to 6-6 and being in a first place battle this Sunday, um, I mean, you just gotta take it. But we're not here to talk about Ravens football. Oh no, we're here to talk about the Baltimore Orioles heading into the baseball winter meetings, which start this Sunday, December 7th, all the way to December 10th. Now, just because the winter meetings take place in that 4-day period, that doesn't mean that once that's over, the signings are done, the trades are done. You have until the season starts to do all that. And heck, you can even do all that until the season, especially trades, until it's either the 31st of July or the 1st of August now. I think they might have changed it, but again, I'm not too sure. I think it's still the 31st. But the Orioles are expected to be one of those teams that is looking to right their wrongs from last year and be pretty aggressive heading into the winter meetings. Now, they've already kind of been not necessarily aggressive, but definitely more active than we've seen a lot of the teams this offseason. I mean, one of the first things the Orioles did was they brought back Andrew Kittredge in a trade. If you remember, we signed Kittredge to, I thought it was a 1 year deal last year. Apparently, it was a 2 year deal, must have had an option in there. And he pitched well, but obviously with where we were at last year, we traded him at the deadline to the Cubs, where he also pitched well again. And apparently the Cubs didn't want him because they traded him back to us for cash. It's not like we had to give up a player or prospect. So, yeah, and I do like the fact that we got Kittredge back. And then we signed Leody Taveras, which may not seem like a big deal, but, it's outfield depth. And considering we don't necessarily have a set center fielder, I know people say Colton Cowser will probably play center, but to me, he fits more over in left field, and I think that's where the Orioles want him. And I know they just got Taylor Ward, which was one of the acquisitions that they made, who plays left field primarily, but you can also DH him too, maybe even play him in right field if it's that big of a deal. But yeah, and then like I said, the first like big thing the Orioles did this offseason was trade for Taylor Ward. And to do that, they traded away Grayson Rodriguez. And look, there's a lot of chatter going around with that trade, but I like the fact that we got Ward. He's that power hitting outfield bat that they were looking for. And with Rodriguez, as much of a Grayson Rodriguez fan as I am, and he has what I think still 4 years of team control left before he actually hits free agency. I'm just so tired of having good pitchers whose future is uncertain because they can't stay healthy. That is the one thing that I can say about Grayson Rodriguez is that when he pitches fine. He's like 20-8 in his career, ERA at 4.11, not great, but still solid enough. And he has more strikeouts than innings pitched, but he hasn't pitched since like July of 2024. So I felt like the writing was on the wall at this point. We're trying to win now, and we can't keep waiting for these guys. I mean, it happened with John Means. And if we would have had a healthy John Means throughout 2023 and 2024, we may have actually been able to go farther in the playoffs than we did. And even Kyle Bradish last year, I'll say this with Bradish, if he doesn't stay healthy this year, maybe trade him next offseason because as good as he's been, ERA under 3 pretty much since his rookie season, he's only really had one full year. That was in 2023, the year he finished what, fourth or fifth in Cy Young voting. I can't even remember that. But yeah, and Taylor Ward, I know he's a free agent after this year, but I just felt like this was a move the Orioles had to make. And considering they have a lot of young outfielders like Enrique Bradfield, and they still have Dylan Beavers out there, it's fine that the Orioles have Ward for 1 year because you got other guys in the waiting. And then, of course, recently the Orioles signed Ryan Helsley to a 2 year deal to be their closer. There was other teams looking at Helsley as a starter. I know he said that Detroit was very like high on him being a starter, but apparently he wants to be a closer because I know what happened with the Mets last year and Helsley was a little ugly, but let's be honest, I don't think he was comfortable in that seventh, eighth inning role. He's mainly a closer, so he has that ninth inning mentality. And with them already having Edwin Diaz, I mean, I get it. They wanted to have that 1-2 punch with him and Diaz at the setup closer, but some guys are just made to be closers, and I think Helsley is just that. And the deal does have an opt out after 1 year, so this could be a 1 year thing. This could be the full 2 year contract. And considering it was only 14 million for one of the better closers on the market, I think the only two closers ranked higher than Helsley were Suarez and I can't remember the other guy's name. Why am I drawing a blank on it? It was another one that I thought the Orioles should go after, but didn't. But either way, the Orioles have been busy, but they're supposed to, or at least people are claiming that they are potentially going to be getting busier heading into the winter meetings, because one of the big needs the Orioles still need is starting pitching, and they really haven't addressed that yet. But really, the only big starting pitcher that's been like off the board at this point is Dylan Cease to the Blue Jays, and I know people wanted Cease to go to the Orioles, as did I. But I'm not going to lie, 7 years, 210 million. I feel like Toronto overpaid, because I'm not calling Cease a bad pitcher. He's great, but he also has consistency issues, hence why he had a 4.55 ERA on a team that has a pretty, well-known pitching ballpark on the Padres and Petco Park. But solid pitcher. But I thought maybe 5 years, 175 million would be the max that he would get. Apparently not. He's getting, well, top of the rotation money, as he should, but is he even the ace on the Blue Jays staff is the question. I hit my knee. That really hurt. But so basically, I'm going to go through right now some of the free agent starting pitchers and even starters that could potentially be up for trade that the Orioles could trade for, and who the Orioles might be willing to get rid of when we talk about, who they have to trade, and just some other options like the hitters and some of the bullpen guys. Because even though we brought back Kittredge and added Helsley, we might need to get another bullpen arm or two to kind of solidify that bullpen will be okay heading into next year. But as reported recently, as of today, like hours ago, it seems like the Framber Valdez sweepstakes is down to two teams, the Mets and the Orioles. Now, what's significant about these two teams for Framber is that their front offices, I believe the general managers to both of these teams, Mike Elias and I can't remember the general manager's name to the Mets, were both in the Houston Astros organization when they drafted Framber Valdez. So, there's already kind of that, knowing each other already. And I know Valdez had that problem last year with his one catcher and all this stuff, and he's complained and whatnot. But he's a solid left-handed pitcher, probably one of the best, if not the best left-handed pitcher in the game. Always consistent, ERA always under 4, pitching anywhere between 175 to 200 innings a year. He's what the Orioles need, and I think it could work out. Now, the question is, if he's asking for Dylan Cease money, then yeah, I just don't know if we can beat the Mets out for that. It's not that I don't think we should cheap out on Framber Valdez, but again, if he's asking for 200 million or over that, what Dylan Cease got, then yeah, I would just say move on, because unlike past years, there's plenty, and I mean plenty, of free agent pitcher options, because other ones I have on here is Ranger Suarez. Now, again, my only problem with Suarez is his health issues. He only pitched 116 innings last year with the Phillies, but when he pitches well and consistent. There's also the guys from Arizona, Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly, the former Diamondbacks 1-2 punch. Gallen coming off a kind of down year, 4.83 ERA, but still pitched over 180 innings. And Merrill Kelly, even at 36 years old last year, is 37 now, 12-9 with a 3.54 ERA. So still pitching very efficiently, and that was coming off the year where he missed most of 2024. There's also Chris Bassett, who's a little older for the Blue Jays, but still, pitching pretty well. And then we kind of have like the wild cards, I would say, for the Orioles. Lucas Giolito was one. When he pitched for the Red Sox last year after coming back from his injury, he pitched well. But then there's also Nick Martinez, who's kind of like, I think he's like 34, 35 years old. He's a vet at this point, and he's been around the league so much. But the thing is, he's been so reliable the past 2 or 3 years, especially last year with the Reds, that I would think that if the Orioles really just trust Trevor Rogers at the top of that rotation to be the number one guy, give Nick Martinez a shot to be the number 3, number 4 guy in the rotation, because he is consistent, and has come out there and done long relief. He's made spot starts. He's done everything. He can almost be like what Albert Suarez was in 2024 to the Orioles coming into 2026. Ugh. And then some of the pitchers I have that we can potentially trade for, some of them we've already been linked to. The first one's Mackenzie Gore of the Nationals. Now, I know people are going to go and they're going to look at his record at 26 and 41 and they're going to judge it. But let's be honest, pitching win loss records are so overrated at this point. Like, it would be one thing if he was like, because what did he go last year, 5 and 15? If it was one thing if he was like 5 and 15 with an ERA of like 5.5, then I can say, okay, yeah, he's bad. But he was 5 and 15 with an ERA just a tad over 4. He strikes out a buttload of guys, and like what the Orioles need, he's a solid left-hander who you can throw in your rotation, and I think the Nationals, they're willing to get rid of him, and hey, they need a first baseman, and who do the Orioles have at first base that's could be traded? His name is Ryan Mountcastle. Considering you have Kobe Mayo and you're projecting to play Sam Basayo at first base a little bit too, Ryan Mountcastle, even though you picked up his option for this year, it just seems like the right move here, especially if you want to get a guy who, if not become the ace of the staff, can punch in at number 2 behind Trevor Rogers there, and you know what you're going to get from Mackenzie Gore, an all-star last year too, might I add, and probably should have been an all-star in 2024. Another one is Freddie Peralta. He's been another one we've been linked to because of our familiarity with the Brewers from a couple years ago when we made the Corbin Burns trade. Um, Obviously, that was huge because we gave them Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. Ortiz has kind of been okay for them. Hall has not really panned out. Corbin Burns did well for us and was one and done, but I still think the Orioles won that trade because of the production that Corbin Burns gave us for that one season. And with Freddie Peralta, he's a free agent after this year. So this would just be another, rental trade. So I don't really know how I feel about this one. If I'm the Orioles and I'm trading for a starting pitcher, I want to make sure he has at least 2 years of team control. That's why I say go for Mackenzie Gore. That's fine. But Freddie Peralta could just end up being Corbin Burns once again, where you're going to get production out of him, but he's probably going to walk at the end of next year in free agency. So I don't know, but I wouldn't be opposed to the Orioles getting him. Other ones include Chris Bubich. I know he kind of had a really good year in the Royals rotation. We'll see though, because he kind of just broke out. So I don't know. I feel like that would just be like a last resort trade. And then there's the 2 guys from Minnesota. The Twins are adamant in that they're still going to be competitive this year, trying to be competitive, but they definitely do have some options. And I know too that Pablo Lopez could be on the trade block and could be traded and all that stuff. But I feel like the Orioles would go for more Joe Ryan or Bailey Ober. Bailey Ober is more of a control pitcher, and although he had a down year last year, he's still been very productive. And Joe Ryan, I believe, has another couple years of team control. He can, punch in at the number 2 spot, at least in the rotation, and give you that good, veteran arm behind Trevor Rogers. So those are just some pitchers I think the Orioles should try to trade for. But the question is, if they're going to trade for these guys, who do they give up? Well, I kind of have a little list here as to who I think could be good for the Orioles to trade away. Ryan Mountcastle's one I mentioned. You have Kobe Mayo, who's your first baseman of the future, and with Adley Rushman and Sam Basayo both being catchers, and the Orioles wanting to put them both in the lineup. Basayo is going to play first base as well too, so you got that log jam there. Mountcastle's a free agent at the end of the year, and I feel like a team like the Nationals who need a first baseman will take it as long as you give them, a prospect or two in return. Another one that could be traded, I don't know because of the contract, is Tyler O'Neill. Last year, he signed that 3-year, $51 million deal with an opt-out after this season's end, but he decided to take it because it was a player option. So he's under our control for the next 2 years. But at the same point in time, that doesn't necessarily mean we can't get rid of him. And already adding Taylor Ward, having prospects like Dylan Beavers and Enrique Bradfield, while also having Colton Cowser, in there, and right now Heston Kjerstad, who's another one I think could be traded. The Orioles outfield is crowded. It is really crowded, and I feel like you can trade a couple of those guys just to kind of, free that up. And Tyler O'Neill could be intriguing enough to some teams because we've seen him when healthy be able to produce that power that everybody, talks about with him. But I just think at this point with the Orioles, it's time to move on or at least think about moving on. But who knows? Maybe he has a bounce back year this year. Another one, and I don't know how many people would agree on me with this, but Cade Povich, I think, could be someone that the Orioles move this offseason as well. And I know what you're thinking. We just got rid of Grayson Rodriguez. We're looking for starting pitching depth. Why would we get rid of Cade Povich? Well, like I mentioned, there's a couple lefties on the market that I think the Orioles can go after. And Povich has had some nice moments, but I mean, in his 2 years so far, one which was a playoff season with the Orioles in 2024, he's been 6-17 with an ERA of 5.5. And I just, as much as I want it to work, I just don't know. Like he hasn't had his like consistency moment where I'm like, okay, this might actually work. He has like a good game or two, but then after that, it's just kind of a whole lot of nothing with him. And I just think that the Orioles can find a team that wants to try to develop him, that is trying to eat a contract or, trade away a pitcher who's on a contract year that can help the Orioles win now. That should be the Orioles' focus. Get players for you to win now, not necessarily ones that are projects. So Cade Povich is one that I can definitely see being traded. And then we also have Austin Overn, who's an outfielder in the minors with other better, outfield prospects. I feel like Austin Overn can go to a team that wants a, pretty decent prospect. Caden Bodden, he's a catcher. Again, you have Rushman, you have Basayo, and even after Rushman leaves, Basayo's going to be there. So I don't know. I just feel like there'd be no room for Bodden there. So I can see him being traded. And pitcher Michael Ferret, who is one of the better Orioles pitching prospects. He's in Double-A right now, pitched very well. But again, you get a rebuilding team. I think they can definitely trade him to get some solid starting pitchers. So that's basically it on the pitching market. I guess the other pitcher I want to talk about before we get into bullpen and hitters is Tatsuya Amai, who is a Japanese phenom pitcher. And I don't know, as much as I want the Orioles to finally get one of these like big name Japanese guys, because I know we got Tomoyuki Sugano last year, but he wasn't like a big name. He was kind of there, and he was okay, 10 wins, ERA of 4.6, not great in 33 home runs allowed, but for a 35-year-old rookie in Japan who doesn't strike out a lot of guys, I mean, what more do you expect from that? And is it there a possibility? I mean, sure, maybe. I mean, now that we got Sugano to come here, maybe there's a possibility that more of these international guys, especially from Japan, will be willing to sign with the Orioles. But my question is, how much am I going to want or going to cost? But I do like his attitude about not wanting to play for the Dodgers, wanting to beat the other guys on the Dodgers, all the Japanese phenoms that they have there. So he could go to a surprise team. But those were the starting pitchers that the Orioles can look after in the free agent and trade market, along with who they can trade to potentially get some of these guys. Let's look at some of the bullpen options for the Orioles now. As like I said, they already got two guys this offseason. Helsley recently to be the closer with Bautista out pretty much the whole season. If not the whole season, he probably wouldn't be back till August. And then obviously bringing back Andrew Kittredge in the trade with the Cubs, where they gave him back to us for cash. But there's still room to improve. It's not to say the Orioles don't have any more good options there. I feel like Yennier Cano needs a bounce back here. Keegan Aiken has been pretty solid. And even someone like a Dietrich Enns, I do like it as kind of like your long relief, middle relief type guys. So they got guys there. But there's definitely some options out there that the Orioles can bring in. Now that they got their closer out of the way, I feel like someone like Tyler Rogers could be interesting because the Orioles and these guys with these wacky deliveries, it always seems to work. I mean, Chad Bradford was very good with the Orioles. Darren O'Day, of course, he wasn't necessarily great with the Orioles, but Paul Fry always did that thing where he like sniffed his glove before he threw the pitch. And Taylor Rogers is just an effective pitcher. I know he's got his twin brother Taylor Rogers too. He could be an option, but Tyler might be a tad bit better. I'm just saying they look alike, but they might be a tad bit better. And then there's Pete Fairbanks, and like I said, I know we already got our closer, but Fairbanks, who can kind of be a closer or eighth inning guy, I think. And heck, if Helsey's pitched 2 days in a row and we don't want to, pitch him a third day in a row, Pete Fairbanks can come out and make the saves. So that can just give you another option there, considering I don't really know how I feel about Cano closing out games. We've tried it before and it just doesn't work out well. I don't think he's suitable for that. And Kittredge can do it. I just wouldn't rely on him doing it a whole season to kind of come in after Helsey's pitched a couple days in a row to have him do it. And we tried Aiken last year, and that was just I don't know what Tony Manzolino was thinking with that, but yeah, Fairbanks could be an option. Luke Weaver, another one, kind of like a long relief, middle relief type guy who's really coming to his own the past couple of years. Kyle Finnegan, he is a veteran who can be a middle relief guy, but also can close out games if you need him to. And Josh Spores was another one I was looking at. Like, yeah, you look at his career numbers and there's kind of like, yeah, but I don't know. I feel like in our case, the way we're able to just take these guys who were kind of semi-successful or not seen as like high priced or anything, and we're able to take them in and they just become successful with us. Spores could be that guy. I mean, look at all the guys that we claimed off of waivers with Mike Elias and how they turned out. I mean, CNL Perez had a good like 2 years. Brian Baker was good. Felix Bautista was another one that we got off waivers that I don't think many people remember. We even got off waivers. So yeah, I feel like a guy like Josh Spores could be one of those ones where it's not going to be looked at as a big signing, but the Orioles might be the ones to kind of help him get to his peak and find his place. So those are some bullpen options. Let's get to the hitters, which, to be honest with you, the Orioles don't really have that many holes that they have to fill. Now that they got Ward, and their whole infield is pretty much set up outside of maybe first base. We'll talk about that though. But another thing the Orioles could go after is a full-time DH, because I've heard that the interest in Kyle Schwarber is there as well. However, again, what's he asking for, and what are the Orioles willing to pay? Because I mean, the man is coming off a 56 home run season and one of his most productive years ever. So if we get Kyle Schwarber, cool. If not, whatever. I mean, like I said, he'd only be good to DH at this point in his career, but man hits bombs, and the Orioles need that, considering they didn't have a single guy hit over 20 of them last year. Then we're going to talk about another one coming from the NPB, Manataka Murakami. He's a third baseman, but mainly would probably DH with the Orioles, even though they say he does have a good defense as well. He would be another power hitter that I think the Orioles could get to put in their lineup. But I have heard that this, class of, Japanese hitters might be a little iffy. So maybe the Orioles stay away from that. I don't know. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa could be a nice bench piece because he's more of like a utility type of guy. Because, the Orioles, they don't really have a solidified backup like infielder yet that isn't a first baseman or a catcher. So, you get Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. He can play second, short, third, and even a little bit of the outfield, plus gives you some speed in there as well. And then, of course, there's another one that people have said we've been linked to, but at this point, I don't think it's going to happen, but we're just going to talk about it because it was a thing for a little while. Pete Alonso. Now, Alonso is interesting because I really don't know. I mean, after a down year in 2024, he came back in 2025 and was really good again. And he opted out of his contract with the Mets. Now, whether that says things about the Mets, that he doesn't want to be there anymore, or what, I don't know. But Pete Alonso, he's not that great of a defender at first base. So again, I feel like you would DH him a lot. And I heard Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz going to the Orioles. There's no way. I don't think we'd shell out that much money. Diaz is going to go somewhere else, considering we just got Helsley. But Alonso can still be on the table. Like I said, though, the thing is, if you're going to get Alonso, then I feel like you got to trade Mountcastle away, which is just fine with me. But the Orioles have too much of a logjam at first base right now, and the fact that we don't even know if we're going to trade Mountcastle or not, it's like, do the Orioles do that? And then you risk having, Alonso, Mountcastle, and Mayo and Basayo at first base this year. It's like, that's too much. However, there's another first baseman that is actually familiar to the franchise. that I wouldn't mind coming back. I mean, we already brought Andrew Kittredge back, so maybe Ryan O'Hearn will be willing to come back. I mean, hey, anything's possible. We've seen it in baseball before. Players were in a contract year with a certain team, they get traded away middle of the season, then become free agents and re-sign with that team. And I feel like Ryan O'Hearn just he's that guy because we know the productivity he's going to give us. He hit 281, career high 17 home runs last year between the Orioles and Padres. He was the Orioles' only All Star last year. We know the productivity we're going to get from him. And at this point, you're not asking to give him like a 3 or 4 year deal for like $100 million or something like that. You can give O'Hearn like a 2 year deal and be set. I mean, obviously, you're probably going to have to pay him 20 million or more at this point in time. But hey, I mean, he's familiar with these guys. He already knows the clubhouse. So I mean, what's stopping the Orioles from doing this outside of, maybe they want to take a look at Kobe Mayo being the first time or full time first baseman. Rushman should play first. I don't know if the Orioles are going to do that. I think considering he's got 2 more years of team control. I think he's got 2 arbitration years this year and next year. I think because the Orioles did play Basayo at first base in the minor leagues. So I think Basayo is going to be the one to play first base. Although I have heard too that there could be potential that on days Basayo is catching, if Freshman's not going to DH, he could play first base as well. But I guess that also depends on how Kobe Mayo does, because if Mayo's doing really well, then you're not going to want to take him out of the lineup. So who knows at this point what first base is going to look like with the Orioles, because it's more that the Orioles have too many of them rather than having too little of them. Sometimes that can be a good thing. I don't know. But yeah, just coming up on Sunday, it's going to be interesting. Now, that doesn't mean since the winter meetings start Sunday that the Orioles are going to make a move day one, but I do expect them to make a move or two because I've heard things are starting to heat up there. The rumors are coming up. And like I said, just today, I heard that the Mets and Orioles are the two finalists for Framber Valdez. And like I said, no matter what you think of Valdez with the whole, Astros thing toward the end with his catcher and, all this other stuff, he's a fit that the Orioles need. And sometimes you got to take that risk. But like I said, they shouldn't panic too much because the free agency starting pitching market is very deep. So if you don't get Valdez after missing out on Cease, that's fine because you got, other options that are really good. I mean, Suarez and Gallen are still in their early 30s, and even some of the older guys like Kelly and Bassett, who are both 37, they're still pitching well. And considering too the Orioles' history the past couple of years was signing the older guys, and it's worked out more often than not. I mean, Kyle Gibson in 2023, was he fantastic? No, but he won 15 games, almost pitched 200 innings, was the ace of the staff. So, you got to give him that. Maybe his second stint last year wasn't anything great, but, hey, it worked out in 2023. And then, what was it? This past year, we got Charlie Morton, and obviously that didn't work out too well. But the Orioles, the past couple of seasons, have had a history of bringing in the older guys. But the thing is, with these older guys, um, they are still producing well. What about a Japanese pitcher? Yeah, I mentioned Tatsuya Imai. He's the one that I like, but there's also a couple more out here. I know Cody Ponce got signed by the Blue Jays. Let me see. It was there's Kona Takahashi. I think he's more like what's his name? Sugano, where he's not going to strike out a ton of guys, but can be effective. He's been posted, and I think there's Kui Arihara, who's 33 years old, and then there's other guys who are coming from Japan, like Foster Griffin and Drew Anderson, that are also on the board as well. I think the Orioles can get one of them. Do I think so? Again, I don't know. I think Tatsuya Imai is definitely the one that everybody's going to want to go after. So we'll see what he does. King is out there. Yeah, Michael King is also out there, but again, it's weird because with Michael King, what was it? I think just 2024 was his first full year as a starter. I know in 2023 the Yankees had him as a starter for a little bit, but I want a guy who's used to being a starting pitcher, who's been doing it for a while, rather than having that guy that was converted. I mean, I know it's worked with him and Clay Holmes. I know the Giants tried it with that. what's his face, but it didn't hasn't really worked out all that well. But I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it either. I mean, you missed out on Cease, so why not go for the other San Diego starting pitcher? As long as the Orioles get one of these, big name guys, because there's a lot of them out there. Because all they need is really one big name guy, and then maybe if you want to finish out the rotation, you either trade for someone who could be a middle or bottom end guy. Because I feel like the Orioles need Trevor Rogers, Kyle Bradish, someone who can be a two or three or potentially a number one, and then Dean Kramer can still fit well in there. The reason I say that Dean Kramer isn't an odd man out, he won 11 games last year and had the most innings pitched by any Orioles starter a year ago. And to be honest with you, the past like 4 years for Dean Kramer have actually been more effective than what I think people give him credit for. So, I think that Dean Kramer should stay, but I think he should be the Orioles' number 5 starter heading into the year. That's why I say add a guy or two in the rotation so that way it pushes Kramer down to the 5 and you got yourself a pretty solid rotation as it is because he's been there, done that. Trevor Rogers, I think the big question with Rogers is can he prove that last year wasn't just like a fluky thing? Because I obviously know, and I think others should go in knowing that he's not going to have a 1.81 ERA throughout the whole season. That was through half a season. That was 18 starts. And it was fantastic 18 starts to where he got Cy Young votes. But at the same point in time, if he's going to actually do well and pitch in a full season, I would say an ERA between like 3.10 and under would definitely make me go, okay, maybe Trevor Rogers is actually fixed up whatever it was that was broken with him in 2024 when we got him. And like I said, with Kyle Bradish, it just depends on the health because we know he can pitch well when he's healthy. So that's not out of the question. And then there's kind of Tyler Wells being a wild card, although I think he would fit better in the bullpen. But Wells, when he came back last year from his injury late in the year, I think he made 4 starts. He was pretty good too. So, I mean, the Orioles have that option there as well. So the Orioles still have depth there. They just need more depth, considering now with how starting pitchers are treated with pitch count and some innings limits depending on who you are and certain situational stuff. It's good to have a multitude of them, and I think the Orioles didn't realize how shorthanded they were last year, and they could have went and got one or two of the top guys and decided to pass on that. But yeah, I expect the Orioles to do something. Maybe not the first day on Sunday, but they have Sunday through Wednesday, and even after that, like I said, just because the winter meetings end, that doesn't mean that teams are not allowed to make moves after that. It's just the winter meetings are when I think the team owners and stuff and like general managers can get together and meet and kind of make the deals in person. Like I think that's basically what the winter meetings is. They can actually talk face to face and maybe even make some deals, and they can talk to some of these free agents, as well. So you like my rotation: Bradish, Fromber, Valdez, Rogers, Kramer, and Povich. To an extent. If we get Valdez, I'd put him at the top, and then I would have Rogers at the 2, Bradish at the 3, Kramer at the 4, Povich. See, you got Valdez in there who's a lefty already. So, like I said, if the Orioles don't get somebody else, I would say maybe put Tyler Wells in there over Povich because Wells, at least, his career ERA is good and, whatnot. I think the Baltimore's would get Byron Buxton during the deadline. What you mean the trade deadline next year, or like in the winter meetings in general? I mean, yeah, that could be another thing because, like I said, in the offseason, okay. Because with the Orioles, like I said, right now Colton Cowser would be slated in center, but I think they like him in left field better. So, I mean, getting a center fielder is not out of the question. However, though, I think they want someone who has like maybe 1 or 2 years of control left because I still think Buxton has a good bit left on his deal because of us having Enrique Bradfield. I think we're very high on him, and we could potentially see Enrique Bradfield in the major leagues this year, even though it's a little weird because he's not a power hitter, but he's very fast, decent hitter, and plays a hell of a good defense. So I don't know. When will Bautista return? I've heard that there's a possibility of August because I think he got hurt in like, I can't even remember when he got injured. again last year. But his recovery time is anywhere between like a year to a year and like a couple months, which would basically lead into August of this year if he does come back at all. So we'll see. And if he does, that just means, hey, that's an addition after the trade deadline that we didn't even need to get anything up for. And if Ryan Helsley's doing well in the closer role, put Bautista in as the setup man. See how that goes, because that could be something. Two strikeout guys like that in the eighth and ninth inning. Good luck. Good luck. That's all I'm saying for that. But yeah, Bautista is not necessarily expected to return this year, but there is a window of potentially toward the end of the year in August, probably early to mid August, if that is a possibility. But that's why the Orioles went out and got Helsley, because they wanted to be sure, and they didn't really want it to be a Craig Kimbrell thing again. Because, like I said, I know people talk about Helsley and his struggle with the Mets last year when he got traded there, but they didn't have him as a closer. They put him in as a setup man, and I think that kind of threw off his mindset, his rhythm, because he's so used to pitching in the ninth inning. So I think with him being a closer and not also having to worry about, are the Orioles going to make me a starter like other teams wanted, I think he'll be a good, I don't want to say bounce back candidate, because he didn't have a bad year. He just had a bad partial year with the Mets. He was doing fine with the Cardinals before that. I'm a Tigers fan. I wouldn't doubt the Orioles will try to trade for Scooble if we do trade him. Yeah, but again, I feel like that would just be Corbin Burns all over again for the Orioles, because Scooble's a free agent after this upcoming season, 2026. And I just don't see the Orioles dishing out money for him. Like, I feel like if the Orioles, if they don't like spend big on a free agent starter and they make a trade, I feel like the Orioles are going to dish the money out for more contract extensions to their own guys. I mean, I know he signed Basayo to that 8-year deal, but it was like 67 million. It wasn't even anything like huge. But if we get to the point where we re-sign Gunnar Henderson, yeah, we're going to need like 300, 400 million for that. And with Scooble, not saying that's what Scooble's going to get, but I would love Scooble, because obviously Cy Young winner. But again, it would just be another Corbin Burns where you're like, oh, this is probably a 1-year rental, because as much as we want the Orioles to re-sign him, they're probably not going to even do that. So uh, again, I would cheer for it, but at the same point in time, I just feel like, he's going to be gone after this year. So if we don't win the World Series, then it's just going to be another one of those, man, we had one of the best pitchers in the game and couldn't complete the job. So I don't know. I think Scooble is one of the ones that might be too high for the, because I feel like the Tigers are going to ask for some like big prospects and big names. And I said this in one of my community posts. I feel like the only Orioles this year that are off limits in trade talks are Jackson Holiday, Trevor Rogers, Gunnar Henderson, and Sam Basayo. I said those are the only four, mainly because we signed Basayo to that extension. I said those are the only four Orioles that I see this year that are absolutely off limits. They're not going to trade those guys. Anybody else, they might listen. I mean, I know the Orioles have said that they plan on keeping Adley Rushman, and I do think that. But if they do think that there's a good trade out there for someone who wants Rushman and the package is good, the Orioles might take it, but again, I don't know if they will this year. Well, at least Ryan Helsley on your team, I believe he can turn around and pitch good, just has to fix location a bit. Yeah, I mean, again, too, but like I said, our history with being able to fix bullpen guys is pretty good. Like I said, all those waiver claims we had that came in 2022 and pitched well. Like I said, from Brian Baker to CNL Perez, Felix Bautista, even Yennier Cano. He wasn't a waiver claim. He was from the Jorge Lopez trade. Jorge Lopez being another one that we got off waivers, where we made a reliever after he was a failed starter. Even Yennier Cano coming in when we got him in the Jorge Lopez trade wasn't anything special, and he was an all-star his first full season. Had a down year last year, but we made him one of the best relievers in the game. And with Helsley, not saying he's not one of the best closers in the game, he is Helsley, but I just feel like I said with the Mets, I felt like he just felt out of place with where he was at in the bullpen. And he seems like I've seen a couple interviews with him already saying that he's very comfortable in that ninth inning. He has that, mentality in the ninth inning. So when he's pitching not in the ninth inning or even later, if he's got to pitch in extra innings, he said, unless it's like later in the year and you're in a playoff pusher, you're in the playoffs, sometimes a closer has to come in the sixth, seventh, eighth inning. But he said mainly in the regular season you focus on the ninth inning and later, and that's what he sets up for. And when he got traded to the Mets, already having Edwin Diaz in the closer role, he had to become the seventh, eighth inning guy. And I know too there was that whole pitch tipping thing potentially, but my thing is if he was tipping pitches all along, why was he so good in St. Louis? That's just I don't know. Like it's not that I don't believe that pitchers tip their own pitches. That happens sometimes, but if he was pitch tipping his whole this whole time, why was he so successful in St. Louis? He was a two-time All-Star there and obviously one of the best closers in the game during his time with the Cardinals. So I don't know. I feel like that's just a story to explain why he struggled so much, or it was like supposed to be a detractor because he was a free agent coming up. But I believe the Orioles know what they're doing with him. I'm not too worried about it. Obviously relievers have weird careers sometimes because they're very. I like to call relievers like bipolar because keep in mind they don't pitch a ton of innings. I think the most you see pitchers pitching, like relief pitchers, is maybe like 70 innings. Sometimes you get guys that pitch 80, but those are like the rare occasions. So their ERA is going to fluctuate and decline pretty quickly depending on how they do. They could have a very rough 2 game stretch where they give up 5 runs and their ERA goes from like 1.75 to like 4 in a matter of 2 outings. But then say they have like 6 straight scoreless outings, then that 4 ERA goes back below 2. And it's a whole thing where as starters, since they pitch more innings, the ERA doesn't fluctuate as much. And that's why it's like you see more quote unquote consistency out of the starters when it comes to ERA. But when they're pitching 150, 160, 170 innings a year, yeah, their ERA is going to slowly decline and slowly increase depending on how they're doing. Whereas with relievers, it's up, down, up, down, up, down. So Helsley last year, the 4.50 ERA, mainly most of that with the Mets. It doesn't bother me that much. Maybe too was just the Mets. People forget they had a monumental collapse and missed the playoffs. So maybe it was just the atmosphere around the Mets too. I don't know. I hear about Lindor like feuding with a lot of his here. So supposedly, I know there was a whole Jeff McNeil thing, and now apparently Juan Soto. But I don't know. That could just be another reason or excuse as to why they quote unquote missed the playoffs a year ago. But yeah, what are some other free agents that maybe I didn't talk about that we could look at the Orioles bringing in? Um, JJ Bleday's a free agent. When did that happen? That could be interesting. Bleday, 28 years old, 3.1 WAR, pretty solid hitter, decent defender. I would say that Bleday could man center field and push Kowser back to left and have Ward DH. That could be pretty interesting because Bidet, he's not a toilet, he's a man. JJ Bleday could be a 2 or 3 year deal and not ask for too much out there. You said Robert Suarez. Again, I don't know about that. I don't really feel like the Orioles are going to dish out that much money to 2 closers. I don't think that. I think Robert Suarez is going to go somewhere else. What about Adonis Garcia? It's Adolis, but the Orioles have too many outfielders. Like and Adolis, I don't know. I'd rather us be a center fielder or someone who can actually field well because Adolis cannot do that. He's a solid hitter, but I don't know. He could be a possibility, but at the same point in time, I'd probably just want him to stay at the DH role, and that's about it. I saw the Rangers and all those guys they released. Eugenio Suarez or too expensive? That's an interesting question. Eugenio Suarez, yeah, he's the second best third baseman by WAR in free agency behind Alex Bregman. He had a 7.7 WAR. Suarez a 7.6. Suarez is 2 years older than Bregman. It's 34, but he hit what, like 40 something home runs last year? Because I think he had that 4 homer game last year. It's hard to say because Westberg's going to be the third baseman. That I don't think that's out of the question. So then that leaves what would you do with Suarez? Because again, you would have to have him and Westberg kind of back and forth and then maybe DH him a little bit. So I don't know. It's not that I think Suarez would be too expensive. I don't think he would make too much sense. That's more like I also want these free agent guys to make sense. What about Bellinger? He plays first and center field. Yeah, I can see that too. I mean, what's okay? 30 years old, 7 WAR. either that or Bader, Harrison Bader, I forgot was another one that I looked at. Said, man, he can man center field. He give him a 1 or 2 year deal. Bellinger Bellinger's overrated to me as I don't think as he's as good as people say he is. He's still a good player, and yeah, I think he could do well. Um, Considering I don't know what the Yankees plan on doing with him if they want to re-sign him and bring him back. We thought they were going to do that with Juan Soto, but they didn't do that. So yeah, we'll wait and see. But Bellinger's definitely one that I think the O's can look at. I know somebody might say Kyle Tucker, but um, I don't know. He doesn't really play center field. Oh, so I think he's out of the picture. A lot of older guys though, like Mike Yastrzemski. I know we had him at one point as a prospect. He's 35. Max Kepler's out there. Wow, Starling Marte's still playing. Good for him. I didn't realize Starling Marte was still playing. And another one too. If you miss out on Schwarber at DH, Marcelo Zuna's always out there. He's 35, but he still had a WAR of 6 last year, so he can still do his thing. Like I said, obviously you're not going to have him play the field, but it's that's that. Luis Arias, what's he listed as a first baseman? Yeah, first baseman because I know he's played like first and second, and I think he started as a shortstop. Um, if the Orioles don't plan on playing Arise at first or second, sure. But again, I think you would want to just DH Arise more. But the thing about DHing Luis Arise, he doesn't hit a lot of home runs. He hits for a good average. Even hitting 292 last year was like a low for him. But I think he only hit like 8 home runs. He's not a power hitter. But again, with his defense being questionable, he would mainly be a DH. So I don't know. Nathaniel Lowe could be another, no pun intended, low risk, high reward type of guy because I think he was with the Nationals and then got traded to the Red Sox. Reese Hoskins is also out there, but he's more of a strikeout or home run kind of guy, and I don't know if the Orioles necessarily want that fully. Um, I feel like the Orioles are going to try to find another catcher because if they plan on playing Basayo at first base, they're going to need like another veteran catcher out there. But there's not a lot of good options. I mean, Romuto's the best, but I don't. The Orioles obviously are not going to get Romuto. There's Carantini. There's Danny Jensen, I guess. Christian Vasquez, Elias Diaz. Gary Sanchez had 24 RBIs in 29 games as an Oriole, so I don't know there. But yeah, the catching market, free agency, very weak this year. I know Jonah Heim was just released, and he was also part of the Orioles organization. So I don't know. Goldie, no. Goldschmidt's done. I'm sorry. No, I would not take my chances on a 38-year-old Paul Goldschmidt like the Yankees did last year. I said it last year when they got him. Wasn't going to work. It did not work. Ben Rice is the better option for him. No, I would not even touch Paul Goldschmidt with a 10-foot pole at all at this point. If it was like 3, 4 years ago, sure. But no, Goldschmidt, even when he will play, you're not going to get a lot out of him anymore. So I'm sorry to the Goldschmidt fans, but no, I would stay far, far away from Paul Goldschmidt at this point. Um, I would take Justin Turner over Paul Goldschmidt, but that's just me. And Justin Turner didn't even have particularly that good of a year. Other guys at second base, let's see, Willie Castro, that could be interesting, but again, he's probably going to go somewhere as a starter. Jorge Polanco is probably going to go back to Seattle, so why would you even look at him? Dylan Moore could be a good utility guy too. He plays like everywhere. Forgot about Ramon Urias. Maybe he could be one that the Orioles bring back. Again, always that possibility, not saying it's going to happen. But yeah, the Orioles have a lot of options here. And I think with the hitting, I think they need to solidify center field if they really don't want Cowser in center. If not, I think it's just a lot of let's get some depth and bench pieces there. Whereas with the starting pitchers and the bullpen, I think that's where the Orioles are going to be most active when we talk about free agency and trades. So that's what I think the Orioles are going to mainly focus on here. Like I said, considering the starting pitching class, the free agency class is stacked this year, and even the guys that are up for trades are also pretty good. I like Twins utility Castro. Yeah, that's another thing I didn't forgot about Castro though is he does. I think I remember him in Minnesota playing the outfield too. So there's that as well. But I think the main thing with us is we have enough outfielders. We don't necessarily have that many position players. Like we have our everyday guys, but when one of them needs a break or one of them gets injured, who's going to step in there? I mean, Jeremiah Jackson's good, but I don't know. Maybe you trade him to get one of these pitchers. I don't know. I'm just saying. Um, and outside of that, I don't know. Castro plays third base, shortstop, and second. Well, okay, playing third might be nice because Westberg gets hurt here and there, so that could be good. Second base, I mean, yeah, there could be days where Jackson Holiday just needs off and he goes second base. Shortstop, Henderson doesn't really get many days off. I think he missed the first 8 games last year and then played every single game after that. So Henderson doesn't miss too many games, although he might have DH'd in a few of those. I can't fully remember either, but yeah. So I'm expecting the Orioles to be active, to add some pieces, make a trade, make a signing or two, and it's going to be for starting pitching and bullpen most likely because, like I said, now that we got that power hitting outfielder out of the way, like we wanted, and the closer. I feel like the Orioles' next priority, as it seems like it is, with the whole Framber Valdez news saying that we're one of two finalists for him, will be starting pitching. Trade for utility guy like Zach McKinstry, plays every infield position and didn't put up a. Yeah, yeah, Zach McKinstry. I have seen him with Detroit play pretty well. He's been a big part of their playoff runs the past couple of years. I don't really know what Detroit's planning on doing. Like I know Scooble's on the block, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're planning to like retool or rebuild. I just think that it could be one of those things too, because I remember this is more football related, but the Ravens had this happen with Lamar Jackson, where before he signed his extension a couple years ago, he requested a trade. And then we ended up giving him an extension or agreeing to an extension. And he basically said that when he requested that trade, it wasn't necessarily that he wanted to be traded. It was just one of those things where, not necessarily to speed up the process, but just to kind of see what the Ravens and what other teams would be willing to do. And also considering, too, he could have had offers from teams and could have signed there, and nobody did it. It was like, okay, Lamar Jackson was just fit to be a Raven. I feel like Tariq Skubal going to be that. I don't know. Maybe Detroit shells out the money. I really don't at this point. We're focused on getting someone like Bichette and Bregman, a third baseman or a shortstop. Yeah, Detroit does need that because what, Javi Baez is playing center field now. That was weird, but hey, he played well last year. So I guess can't really knock him for that because God, who's your starting shortstop now? Trey Sweeney, I think it was, and at third base, I don't even know who third base is anymore for Detroit. At one point, I remember it was Andy Ibanez, but I'm not too sure now. So, yeah, I can see Bregman going to the Tigers. Bichette, I don't know. I feel like he wants to go back to Toronto, but we'll see. It was Colt Keith. That's who it was, Colt Keith. Because for whatever reason, I thought Colt Keith played first base last year, but I know Spencer Torkelson came back and kind of had a semi return, not like a return, but a better year than what he had in 2024. That's for sure. So, yeah, I think it's inevitable that the Tigers will extend Tariq Skubal right now because he's their best pitcher. I mean, they got some other nice young options there, but like Skubal is the guy that makes or breaks that rotation. And considering their offense right now is not fantastic, they need the pitching to be good, which it has been. That's been pretty much the last couple of years why they made it to the playoffs. I mean, in 2024, Detroit made the playoffs, what, 86 wins? And I think you look at their offensive stats and their players, it was like they didn't have like a single position player who was the best at anything in any particular category, and they still made the playoffs. It was weird, but AJ Hinch is just a solid manager. I know he's tied to the Astros thingamajig, but he's still a pretty solid manager for that type of stuff. So yeah. And I also saw an article too. Someone said, "Are the Orioles going to become a free agent destination that free agents want to go to?" And it kind of made me think. I'm like, I have heard some of the free agents that we've signed over the past couple of years say this is an intriguing team, especially for older players who are looking for, chase a championship. With us having this young, talented core, there could be, veteran players who are like, I want to go there now because, I want to feel that, and I want to be able to say this team has a chance at winning a championship. So there's that possibility too. Next year we will have a healthy rotation, Olson and Job. Yeah, I knew about Reese Olson. He was one of the ones I was thinking of, and I knew about Jackson Job or Joby, however you say. I think it's Job, but yeah, I know that he was injured most of last year too. So all in all, though, I still think the Tigers need Tariq Skubal because those guys are kind of. Reese Olson isn't necessarily unproven. I just know he has health issues, and Jackson Job. I mean, he needs a full healthy season to really see what you can get out of him as well. So, um, yeah, good luck to your Tigers out there. I think they can still be a pretty good team no matter what happens. Obviously, the AL Central is not not the hardest. I mean, the Guardians always seem to be pretty good, and the Royals are decent. The Twins are like the Rays. They're always like good or bad. There's really no in between. The White Sox, I don't really think you got to worry about. But why Orioles never trade with the Nats? I don't know. I feel like it could be like a Baltimore DC rivalry thing. I don't think people get how big that rivalry is because they're only like 30 minutes from each other. Like I've thought about it before going to a Washington Nationals game, like when they play the Orioles in DC, because it's not that far. Like literally, I can go from Oriole Park to Nationals Park in like 30 minutes just by like a train or a bus or whatever. It's that close. But yeah, now that I think about it, we've never traded for anybody on the Nationals. It's a little weird. I like Baltimore a lot. Hope they can do SMTH and be a 100 win team again. Um, I don't know. The 100 win season, that even shocked me. I mean, if we can get it to a point where we can win like 94 to 98 games next year, because I think that's what you're going to need to win the AL East. That's basically where I want to be at. Imagine Mackenzie Gore to the Orioles. I mean, there's a possibility. Just saying. A couple years ago, it might have seemed way out of left field. People would have been like, no, you're crazy. This isn't going to happen, but there is like a possibility. How big? I'll say 50-50. I'm not going to sit here and say it's greater than a 50% chance, but the Orioles, from what I've heard from other GMs and other sources, are supposed to be aggressive. Now, does that mean anything? No, until you see it. But when you look at what they've done so far, being one of the more active teams this offseason and already making a couple of big moves, I mean, I'm almost prone to believe that they're gonna do something. Like it's not it's not out of the picture. The Beltway rivalry is real. I never felt the tension. I think it's more relevant in football, really, because every time the Ravens and the Commanders, formerly football team, formerly Redskins, play each other, whether it's in Baltimore. Well, I think it's because Washington also plays in Maryland in the NFL. They play in Landover, and that's obviously not too far from Baltimore. Granted, I think in a couple of years the Commanders will be back playing in DC with a new stadium, but I think that's why football you feel it more because they're way more closer to each other. Like there's certain areas there where like if you live in this certain part of Maryland, you might be a Commanders fan over a Ravens fan or this, that, and the other. It's almost kind of like the Giants and Jets, where it's like if you're in New Jersey, you're a fan, and then certain parts of New York are like Yankees, Mets, that kind of thing. I'm not saying it's as big a rivalry as Yankees, Mets. I'm just saying I think you got to be an Orioles or Nationals fan to really understand the rivalry and why it's a rivalry. It's just one of those things. Plus, two, what people don't realize, why I don't think it's as relevant in the MLB, the Beltway rivalry, is because the Nationals used to be the Expos. So, I mean, that could do it too, but they've been the Nationals for like 20 years now at this point. So, and we've played them every year, home and away series since then. So, I don't know, but like I said, I think to see it more, you got to be a Orioles and Ravens fan and kind of understand how the Beltway stuff works. Like I live in PA now, but I was born in Baltimore. I know Maryland well, and I know about the whole Maryland DC rivalry thing that goes on. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to get at. Just some of this stuff here with the upcoming winter meetings because I wanted to talk because I feel like you know there's going to be stuff happening. It's kind of been a semi-quiet off season. I mean, Dylan Cease went somewhere. There's been a couple trades. Devin Williams just went to the Mets, and I think the Red Sox just got Juan Oviedo or Johan Oviedo last night from the Pirates. So things have been happening, but I feel like things are going to start heating up starting Sunday and into Wednesday and even past that. It's usually around this time where we see more activity take place because we're only a month since the World Series ended. So, baseball has one of the fastest off seasons. They end in November and they're usually at spring training late February. So there's not a lot of time. If you want to make moves, you got to make them, and that's what it is. But I think teams tend to wait a little bit before actually going out and doing anything. But we'll see too. I'm also interested to see what other teams are going to be aggressive because I've heard the Reds are in on Schwarber because they made the playoffs last year. Um, the Yankees, I'm interested because I heard that they're trying to cut down on payroll, which surprises me. But hey, whatever you do, you I guess. Um, and even the Dodgers have kind of been quiet. I heard the Yankees are broke. I think they're BSing a little bit. I don't think they're broke. They're worth $8.2 billion, and I still feel like their payroll is decent enough. So I don't think they're broke. They might not have as much as we're used to them having, but they're the Yankees. Sometimes they find a way as well. So I don't know. They could make trades. They can do that. But yeah, and the Dodgers have been surprisingly quiet. Like, have they even signed anybody? They brought Miguel Rojas back, but that was all I really remember from them. And like I said, Amai doesn't want to play there, so I don't think he's going to go there. He's already saying he doesn't want to play there. I highly doubt unless they throw him like a $1 billion contract. Yeah, I doubt that he'll end up playing there. So the Dodgers are also interesting too because usually they've done something of note by now, but they haven't. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks to those who tuned in and had added topics for me to talk about along with what I wanted to talk about with this Orioles stuff. And I will be keeping track Sunday through Wednesday at the winter meetings just for MLB things, but mainly Orioles stuff. And obviously, if news drops, I will mainly probably put it on the community page because that's what I've been doing. Because I'm not one of those guys on this channel where everything Orioles that happens, I'm going to be like, oh, they signed this player, they traded for this player, because frankly, I'm working a lot more, so I don't necessarily have the time to do that. But I'll put it on the community page. I'll kind of give you my thoughts on there. And if the Orioles make like a really big signing or really big trade, that might go into video form. If we get Framber Valdez or we trade for one of the starting pitchers I mentioned, or whatever, that might go in video form. But if it's something else that's kind of worth talking about, but not in the form of a video, then I will do that. So yeah, I'll keep track of that. And obviously Sunday too, I'll be a little bit busy watching Ravens Steelers. So there's that as well. So while the Ravens game's going on, I'll probably be keeping track during commercials, see if the Orioles have done anything or what's going on in the MLB world. But yeah, until then, that's it for me. Stay safe out there. And if I don't see y'all before the holidays, happy holidays. And I will catch you all in the next one.